About 200,000 Germans immigrated to the US between 700 and 1800. Over the next 100 years, it is estimated that over 6 million people more left their homeland after 1800 and sought a new home in America. In the face of extreme dangers and challenges, they all try to find better living conditions in the new world. In the 19th century especially was a time of extreme changes in the German territories. On the one hand, it was a period of extreme population growth, coupled with industrializations and rise of science and technology. At the same time, there were wars, crop failures, extreme political changes, and the first awakening of the German national identity. The liberation of German territories from the French had an extremely strong influence of the Germans, and perhaps Napoleon Bonaparte was the key catalyst for the former German people divided into many kingdoms and states to find themselves anew in a German nation. This sounds very simple and exciting, but it was anything but not simple. But it was also the time of the greatest wave of German immigrations, and not without reasons. Everyone who immigrated thought long and hard about whatever it was worth to risk leaving the homeland, and not only the reason for immigration, but also the dangers and obstacles that stood in the way, were also extreme and are important to shed a light on. I will get to the dangers and challenges in a moment, also for the main reasons for immigrations. But the smallest proportion of immigrants could be described as adventurers and lucky beggars. Those who left the homeland or immigrate simple for the sake of adventure or in the hope of great fortune and wealth, without any hardship at home. On the other hand, there are all those immigrants who had problems in the homeland and were more or less focused to leave. Even though the reasons were very different and varied, they also overlapped. For most of them, there was a few major reasons that shaped their decisions. The basic need to survive was a major reason for leaving home. For various reasons, the need was something so great that the survival of their own family was in question. On the one hand, it was not uncommon to work 80 hours 6 days a week. At the same time, there was a lack of food because the money earned was not enough to feed the family. It was not uncommon for the father, mother, and the children to work, and in the basic living conditions were in a terrible shape. And when someone was no longer able to provide for his own family and became completely miserable, there was hunger at the same time. And when the daily bread was no longer enough, and the idea of immigration quickly arose, you didn't have to grow up in the edge of society. This was a time of explosive population growth, and at the same time Germany was changing from an agri nation with agriculture was dominant to an industrial nation. Many families often left their land on the eldest son. This was not done for evil or unkindness to the other children. Rather, many farms were only large enough to support one family. Future divisions would have destroyed the farm in the long run. At this time, it was not uncommon for the younger brother, but more often for a sister to remain unmarried on the farm and help out as a servant or a labor for the rest of his life. Those who were not the oldest but married were usually left without means. In some cases, they were given money to afford a passage in a new life. But there were other reasons for immigration as well. I will introduce you two of them before I talk about the main obstacles and dangers of immigration. By the way, if you want to learn more about how the Germans who immigrates lived in the US and what they experienced, then subscribe this YouTube channel. The last reasons have to do with the social conditions. The citizens were focused to immigrate, or they believed that they could no longer live in these social conditions. On the one hand, depending on the region, religious or persecutions could take place, often due to strict and traditional regulations, especially in the agriculture areas. But also political reasons forced many to say that they did not feel comfortable in German areas. On the one hand, it was mainly young men who wanted to escape the official military service by immigration. They often used forged passports or documents, but crimes also tried to escape the punishment by fleeing to America. In 1869, J. Weber, in his book on the German immigrations, summarized the reasons as follows. What specially reasons were added, namely religious persecutions and ecclesiastic intolerance, overbundling with taxes and duties, food price increase, food worries, political discontent, the threat of war, loss of reputation and name, the strong desire for change, because few people can tolerate eternally monotony. In short, the staving of importance of mental and physical well-being. This was countered by the vision of a paradise in America. There were often rosy advertisements that promised dreamlike conditions and the best living conditions. They created an extreme attraction to the new world. The advertisement deliberately downplayed, if not hide, the real risk of hardship that wait for them in America. For its part of the United States was also very interested in the immigration for hard-working immigrants. High profits were expected for the country as young, healthy, energized citizens tended to immigrate to the US. Therefore, America encouraged immigration and had very liberal immigration policy, politically, economically, and religiously. The main goal was to colonize the wide, almost inhabited areas of the US. Being in 1872, the US offered land for all settlers who moved to the new territories and meet certain requirements such as ownership and residence. While the problems of the country in which they lived were clearly to the immigrants, at the same time, the so dreamlike image of the US, the problems of which were often unknown. Nevertheless, the decision to immigrate was not an easy one for the most of them. It also meant never seeing the families in the homeland again. The family obstacles existed in their own homeland. In Germany, the first question was whatever one was in the right condition to immigrate. Were they physically and mentally ready for such big challenge? Then there was the question of legal or illegal immigration. This was especially challenging for young men who the homeland wanted to keep them and use their strength, not least for the army. Then there was a challenge of raising enough money to make the journey. It was not uncommon for illegal or poor immigrants to try earn the money first in the major immigration ports like Bremerhaven and Hamburg, where the most immigrants go from Germany to America. It was even more difficult for families as the journey was much more dangerous for children and the journey into the unknown was a greater challenge for the providers. It was not uncommon for the father to travel as a courtier, master, maker, and even if the risk never seeing his family again. In addition, there were still many countries and languages in Germany as well in their own laws and regions that had to be overcome. At the same time, there was a danger of being attacked on the way. And then there was a dangerous sea crossing over the Atlantic. Both should be subject of a separate video. At the time, witnesses reported what he saw in Bremerhaven during his own immigration, as Friedrich Engels wrote after he leaving the ship in 1840. I have seen how close they are to really leaving German ground forever and sail to the open sea. They are almost all loyal German faces, without falschheit and with strong arms. That they are really not the worst. And it is by no means always a lack of food, let alone greed, that divides people away. It is the changed position of the German farmer between slavery and independence. It is the bondage to interiors and the rule of the feudal courts that sour the countryman's food, until he decided to leave his fatherland. When they arrived in the US, reality set in, and many unknown challenges and paths were to be taken. But some of the new immigrants were disappointed by what they had experienced and that they returned home, despite all the hardship and challenges. It is estimated around 20% of all Germans returned. For the others, life and adventure were just beginning. This included the discovery of complete new foods. One of them was the pumpkin. I chose a recipe and present this in this video. This is what the new dish might be have looked for like many Germans. I cooked it completely according to a recipe, then I present it in this video.